Experience Wisdom. So today for our episode, we're going to open it up for discussion. And what are we going to start off with here?
Yeah, so just before this, we were talking about trauma bonds. So I think that'd be something good to talk about. So like with trauma bonding, that can be in relationships where you bond with somebody over your trauma, whether it be a friend, a partner, or anybody really. So
yeah, we were kind of just talking about that a little bit ago regarding like, because I was like, I don't know if I ever really trauma bonded, because I never straight out let people know my past and what happened to me. And then Adriana and you were just kind of saying, well, in a sense, like you don't actually have to straight out say what your traumas are to each other. It's like trauma bonding is also like finding a partner that that you know things about them and their trauma that you could resonate with, and so that's another way someone can, you know, trauma bond with another. So we kind of were just talking about that,
and I think that like there's a difference between trauma bonding, and like learning and growing, like how we are. Because trauma bonding, I would say, is more
victim mentality, I would say.
Like the world's against me or us, or like you have this perception of people because of the way you were treated when you were younger, and so then you just both kind of like agree that that's just how life is, when in reality it's not, you know. And sometimes it's hard to get out of that because you guys sometimes dig each other even more deep into the trauma. But
yeah, whereas like the healthy way of having a relationship, not that there's one certain way, but having a relationship where you both want to grow is, you know, you can still speak of your traumas together and then just kind of like, but instead of staying in that space and staying in the victim mentality and understanding, you know, yourself, like self-awareness and like what you need to work on and what you need to heal, you know, individually, you know, and working and healing together and stuff like that. So that's a healthier way, I would say.
yeah. Or like making it okay because this person has gone through it, and, you know, not challenging them to be better or to do things differently or to try, you know, maybe like, let's say if the bond or the trauma was because of a parent, and you're just like also encouraging the negative behavior of like, let's go drink together, let's go get crazy, or let's, you know, instead of challenging each other to do better, try better, and see things in a different perspective, you know. So
Yeah, it's very intense, and I think if you're not careful, you can hold each other back, like from actually progressing, because you kind of pull each other back into that victim mentality or trauma kind of mindset.
It's understanding that you will be triggered, whether it's with each other or other people, you know, and it's sitting in that space and understanding yourself and being patient with yourself, and if you still feel like there's a certain, you know, trauma issue that you had in the past that you still have to work on, it's looking at that trauma in yourself in a, like Adriana said, in a different perspective, and just wanting to grow with that. So
Yeah, and I had a question for you, because maybe you'll know, but not that you know. I'm just saying because you know, you've read that book too, right?
yeah.
And I'm wondering, we're talking about trauma bonds like with other people, like friends, partners, but what about trauma with siblings? Because we could also have been or are trauma bonded in some way, like all of us.
I think we all have at some point, you know, where we all didn't really, we were less self-aware, and we didn't really know what to do with the trauma that we all felt with each other, and so then we kind of, again, swept it underneath the rug instead of like at that point discussing it with each other, whereas now like we're able to discuss that with each other, and we're able to like grow and learn through it instead of being triggered by each other and saying I'm not talking to you for 3 weeks or 2 months or
Yeah, or like
Essentially.
like a certain situation, I feel like between us two is kind of like, let's say, if we're scared to say something to you, to bring something up,
yeah,
Yeah,
that was a
we
huge
bond
one.
with that, like
Yeah.
scary, like, okay, how should we bring it up, or how should we discuss it, or something like that. I think that's a huge
Yeah,
one.
that is a good one.
And but I think that now it's a little bit different just because we know that you're more receptive.
Whereas I didn't know what to do with the triggers, so when you guys would mention anything to me, I would like really want to like freak out and just shut down and nope, we're not talking about it, type of thing. Whereas now I understand my triggers and I understand, I did a lot of that healing, so I'm able to grow with you and understand like it's okay to be triggered with each other. That's okay. It doesn't mean we need to ignore each other. We don't need to ignore the issue. Like we do more of the communication with each other, and and I do remember that, you guys.
Well,
Yeah.
and
I'm not telling her,
and
I'm
not
not
just,
asking her.
and not just like about your with you, but like I think also like with our anxiety, like I feel like
you
we
should
have
say something. Girl. You say something.
Yeah, you two
Yeah.
were a lot more
Just anxious about
anxious.
Well, not even just about her, but like in general. Like
Anything.
when I'm in a room with you, like we could feel each
Yeah.
other's
Yeah.
when something's not right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so
like
when
we
to approach
feel-
and when not to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was more of I'm not talking, I'm avoiding the issue, and you guys are like, well, I would like to talk, but I'm scared to talk,
Yeah. Or like even like with being reactive to us in a certain way, it made it difficult for us to be like, oh, like how do we even
Bring something up
in any
yeah.
situation. So like that sibling trauma bonding would be that, where we're like, oh God, let's just walk out of here
Yeah.
or something like.
because she definitely had no control of her emotions. Like
Walking
she
on
did not know
eggshells,
how
yeah.
to communicate with us. She just learned through being reactive, and that's I carried a lot of her traits in that way. Like nope, it's my way or the highway kind of attitude, and it isn't like my way or the highway. I would say it's more like this triggers me and I don't know what to do with it, so I'm gonna get upset and I'm gonna avoid it afterwards. And then it wasn't until later on where she sat with that trigger and then she would come and talk to us. But that's how it was. It was like, I love you, I'm gonna show you love, and I'm not, I'm gonna show you love. And again, it's doesn't make her a bad person. It's just legit how she grew up and all she knew, kind of like last week's ancestral patterns when we talked about that. It was like, that's just the environment she grew up in, and she didn't know any different, and so then, she didn't know how to get a hold of those emotions because I don't think she was ever taught how to communicate well, and just that emotions are okay. And I felt like she was really ashamed of them, that she reacted a lot.
I think in like partnerships, so like with like significant other, it shows up a little bit different because you're like their trauma and your trauma, so it's almost like you make it okay for them maybe sometimes to treat you a certain way because you're like, I get it, I get what they went through because I feel that same way. And so then it's almost like you not only make it okay, but enable that that situation.
Making said excuses for their behavior and the way they treat you. And it's like, you can be empathetic and compassionate towards other people's traumas, but ultimately they have to do their own healing. We cannot go out there and save people. We're people have to do their own healing. They have to decide and make that decision for themselves. And so then you get to decide. We all have choices. We get to decide what we allow in our lives and the behavior of others, especially if it's behavior that's repetitive over and over and over again, you know. Again, it's not like it's their fault either because they have that trauma, but at the same time, you have to know your worth enough that it's like, hey, I don't really feel safe and I don't feel comfortable at this point anymore. So that's when you have to step up for yourself and you have to advocate for yourself. And I think a lot of it our upbringing was we didn't know how to advocate for ourselves, and so at some point, you know, as we got into adulthood, we didn't really know how to do that in relationships. We just allowed and coddled and was there for a person over and over again, and until we finally realized and said, enough is enough. We see our worth and we see that we want to show you how we want to be treated and stuff like that. But
and I actually just kind of had this conversation with a friend, and they said, conversation was kind of like, anytime I see you with a certain person, I get jealous, or I start to think that maybe you're, this, like, you have something with that person or whatever it was. And the way I react is like, well, that's not my problem. For me to think that, like, if you're like a jealous person, that's not on me. That I know who I am as a person to be truthful or honest or anything like that. So that's on you. That's your thing that you need to work on, So that's a good way. Otherwise, if I wasn't aware of, myself or aware of my healing that I need to do or work on or whatever it is, I would be like, you know what? Do everything to just make sure they're okay, reassure them that it's not my job to do that, So I think that's another, like, different way that people end up trauma bonding, because it's like you just want to make sure that they're good, but it's not our job to do that. It's not.
I think a lot of it is insecurity in people. They're not secure within themselves, so they're gonna project. So like the jealousy that you say, like they're gonna project that upon you. Like you're the one doing, the work for yourself, and you're secure within yourself. So then when somebody brings that up, it's like, well, I'm confident that I'm, I'm okay. I'm who I am. I'm not doing anything. So like the whole jealousy thing, I'm sorry.
Or even like with friends, like I've had someone come up to me and say, I know you probably feel like really left out because they are, bonding more than you, and it's like, actually, no, that doesn't come, up at all. But
isn't it crazy how people project the weirdest thing, like the most? Oh, I'm like, what? No, like I think you're just going in your head and seeing things. Like I've had a lot of people project stuff, and I've also been the projector, the person projecting, so I get it. But it's like now, when you get into a certain space within yourself, and you just see that a lot with people, and I work a lot with energy, so I know energy well, and sometimes like you just see it and feel it, and so you're like, okay, I'm just gonna ignore it. But yeah, it's crazy. Like, we don't do it, we've all been there. The projecting, we go in our heads at times,
Yeah, but I was gonna say that I think being in a trauma bond can be a dangerous place if you're not aware of like that it's happening. And I think a lot of times it does end badly, and you don't realize until after, like so much time after.
Yeah.
That's definitely the truth, especially like.
And it's just because you're so comfortable too. I think that you're sometimes so comfortable with that person because either they know so much about you, and to get out of that is like, why would I want to meet a new friend or be in a new relationship when this person already knows where I came from, knows my past, knows, and we've already bonded on that, and it's like they just make it so easy to be in a relationship with them, because you think like all that negative stuff is kind of holding you together. Because let's say, you know, I was in a trauma bond, and then it's like you finally like are more aware. You become more like, whoa, I'm like just in this deep, dark like place with this person. And then you're working on yourself and you're growing and all that stuff, and then you look back and they're just still at the same place, and it's like, ugh.
Yeah. And then like that's such a fast way and easy way for people to just make an excuse to stay in those type of relationships too. They're like how you say, they know everything about me. I don't want to have to start all over and blah blah blah. Like, but what people don't realize is like when you do like. One, it's not healthy staying in a dynamic like that where neither party, like they've already crossed their boundaries so much to the point where it's like almost unrepairable, and then yet they still stay. But it's like what people don't realize is like, yeah, like why is it wrong to have to start over and develop a healthy relationship? It doesn't mean in that new relationship you have to let someone know every single detail of your life. It's not like you have to, you know. It doesn't make one person relationship more deeper than the other just because you've expressed all your trauma to that one person, you know. You can start a new relationship and say, hey, sometimes I'm triggered by certain things, but you know, and then just make them aware of that. But you don't have to sit there and like tell everybody every single detail, you know. That's another thing that I noticed like through trauma bonding too, is like they feel like they have to give everything of themselves to one person, you know, when you don't need to give your whole self to one person. You know, that's why you have close family, that's why you have friends, you know. But I feel like, yeah, people like want to kind of, some people like that control of just having that deep closeness, like the trauma bonding. They look at it as like we've been through hell and back together, so we should stay together kind of thing. But how long do you want to allow someone to cross your boundaries? How long do you want to allow the toxicity of a fight or the silent treatment or the mind games, or like how does that make you feel good? But then some people are addicted to that too, the toxicity, because that's how they grew up as well. So there's that too. So I'd say it's so important, like I always say, important to do your own inner healing for yourself. But yeah. So what would you say has been like the icing in the cake fallout the most, like in a relationship that you had, where you're like, you noticed that it's just not gonna go anywhere, and you're like, I have to let go? Was the letting go process the hardest for you, or was like, what would have been like a reason why you would leave a relationship when you feel like there's no growth anymore? Or
I would say the hardest one for me would have been because of like I love that person so much. I wanted them to see how I view them, you know. To see their like, they could be this amazing person if they either like valued themselves more, or if they didn't accept such negativity in their life, or didn't allow certain people to treat them a certain way, or so it was like I could tell them over and over and over again like their worth, and like that they can do it, they're like great, they're a good person, but it's like you're, you know, beating a dead horse. So it's like
they have to see it for themselves.
So it was like that letting go that was so hard. So because it was like I love them so much, I care about this person so much, but it's like there's nothing else I can do for you, you know, like if you can't see it, I gotta let it go.
What about you, Amy?
Like in general, what's
Yeah.
been the hardest? I think letting go of a relationship where coming to terms with the fact that we couldn't heal together. We had to heal apart. That was really hard. And knowing like we didn't have major, huge issues, but it was like that we triggered each other so much we couldn't heal together, and that was really hard to come to terms with. Because I've been in very toxic relationships where I'm just like, it's easier because they give you a reason to walk away, like cheating or like hurting you in some way, and it's like it's easy to walk away because you know
you're mad at them because they did a shitty thing to you.
Yeah, but when it's something like they haven't hurt you, you know, and it just comes down to not being able to figure it out, like heal together, like that. That's probably the hardest. How about you?
I was just thinking, I haven't been in a relationship in like 4 years, so I guess my very last one was like hard to let go because there were children involved, and so like that was the hardest because it's not just bonding with that person, but it's also starting a family with them, so that was the hard one. But like I think it was really hard to do, like the letting go process was hard because you can physically leave somebody, but on an energetic sense it's like there's still like you still have those feelings. I mean, I don't have those feelings. That was like a long time ago. I healed long time ago from my last relationship, but like that was the hard thing, was like I could walk away, but like my heart was still there with, you know, the comfort of it. But it was such a, you know, toxic relationship because neither party, they trauma bonded, you know, and neither party was able to get out of the victim mentality, you know, and didn't have the tools to heal. So it wasn't until I started looking more deeper within myself when I left that relationship, and then later saw where I, you know, what part I took in the relationship and where I could have grown. But I don't think I would have grown in that relationship had I stayed there. I think that I had to leave it to sit with myself independently and work on myself. Like I said, I've been on this healing journey for 4 years, and I've been on my own, and I've been the most happiest I've ever been, the most independent I've ever been. And so I think that I bloomed more being on my own than being with other people, because I feel like I always attracted people that, you know, as I was like with trauma and didn't know how to deal with their own insecurities, you know. And so I love being single, like I do. Of course someday I want someone, at my side, but I'm fine right now, you know. So the letting go process, I would have said back then, would have been the hard. And when I say let go, not just physically, again, physically and energetically, because you can still have someone in your energy, and you know. But I think letting go is a powerful thing.
It's almost like, well, for me anyways, because I could relate when you're like, my heart was still there. It's like you have to detox. You have to. It's like a detox. You go through this season where you literally have to detox from that relationship, the other person, all of it.
Yeah. And it's lonely. It can be lonely because, you know, for me, this was a friendship, so it was like, I have, you know, whether I grew up with you or have, you know, this person knew a lot about me, so it's like, to not be available like I used to be, it was hard, because it's almost like, feel guilty because, you know, I know everything they're going through. I know that they're just so, like, in a dark place. And then to step away from them when they're in a dark place, it's like you feel guilty for that, you know? But you know that there's nothing that you can contribute to the relationship anymore because it's just going down a bad path. And also, I don't want to be negative. I don't want that in my life. So it's like you're so torn between the two in that situation. So I think it's lonely because it's like you want to tell them all these things, but all you can do is just be an example, really, you know? So, and until they understand why you do things a certain way, it can be really lonely because then they feel like you betrayed that loyalty or you betrayed that like connection with them, and like, you know, you just left, you know, so it's hard.
Yeah. And then also when you're like, we both couldn't get out of that victim mentality, and you couldn't see your part in it. Like I also felt the same way. Like when I was in it, I'm just like, they don't do this, or they're not doing this, they're not. And then when we did separate, I was like, oh shit! Like I definitely played a part in that. So yeah, that's kind of something that I've experienced too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's
but it's weird because now it's so much easier for me to see when somebody is.
Mm-hmm. And that's because you guys did inner work.
Yeah.
So then you're able to see it like more for yourself the more work you've done, you know, and the more healing you do, you just see more and more and more.
Like just little things, like if someone's like, oh, you're just too good to be true, or you are just little weird things like that, you're like, that doesn't seem right. Like,
so you don't feel like you deserve.
Yeah. Like,
yeah.
So obviously you don't feel deserving enough to have a good relationship if that's how you feel this is, or whatever, you know, or you don't feel
especially if that
worthy
person
enough. Yeah.
Feels like if that person doesn't feel deserving of you, well then that person obviously has more inner healing to do, because you have to be in a space where you know what you deserve, you know your worthiness, you know, and if you're like connecting with someone that doesn't know that, they're going to have these insecurities not only within themselves, but they're going to project it upon you. You want to get in a relationship to at least for someone to at least know they're worth enough to be like, you know, I'm not going to project any of my old baggage, you know, into this new relationship. And again, and it's not like you have to like heal everything, because again, we're always healing. It's just like having a partner that will grow with you, you know, and understanding each other in such a profound level that you can give each other that space. And you know, that's the hard part, is finding a partner that is able to or wanting to do that, because not many people have done their or want like know how to do inner work, or whatever the reason is, you know. And I notice a lot too, listening to other people's stories and their current relationships, and how both of them are in such they're so determined to be right instead of understanding each other. I notice that a lot too. And I notice people's insecurities really easily, and like you just listen, but you know where it's gone, like what is going on and what's gone wrong.
And I don't think that you have to completely let people go in order to heal. Like you can heal, I think, within the relationship still. Like what you were talking about. Like I think for me and my friend, when we were trauma bonded, like one of us decided like we were going to get out of that victim mentality, and it kind of influenced the way that the other person also viewed it. So I don't think you always have to like let these people, these trauma bonds go. You can also be an example for each other to learn and grow.
But it's up to both of you to want to bring the friendship back and grow together, you know.
And I think it's so good to have those clear boundaries too. That was hard for me. It was like, I'm not going to be available to you at all any hour of the day anymore. You know, I'm not going to, you know, put my things aside anymore to make sure you're good, you know, anytime you were going through something hard, because I didn't feel that coming back to me, you know? So it's like, I think as long as you're still doing, you know, and it wasn't a letting go of like completely cutting ties, but it was like, I need a break. I need to like reevaluate myself too, because it's like I started feeling I was going in negative, doing negative things, or you know, accepting negative behavior from other people as well, you know. So I think too with once you're more aware of yourself and you're doing that healing, and obviously you can't always heal with that other person, but I think it's just so important to just be yourself, be the light that, you know, that they can eventually, they will eventually see themselves too, you know. So I think, and that's with everyone, I think that's always a situation that you should never try to change anyone anyway. You should never try to convince them, you know, because everyone has to learn that on their own, so. But yeah.
Alright. What do we have? Awakening, energetic upgrades, a new way of being, integration. It's a really pretty card. All these cards are beautiful. I love this Oracle deck. It's Rebecca Campbell. Awakening, energetic upgrades, a new way of being, integration. You are going through a period of awakening. Things are changing within you and at many levels. You are starting to remember ancient truths and discovering more and more about who you are and why you incarnated. You may find that you are experiencing past life flashbacks, seeing the invisible thread that is woven through all of life, or even feeling Kundalini Shakti rise through your body from the base of your spine. The most important thing for this time is not to overthink it and stay grounded. Share your experiences with like-soul people while you consciously integrate them. Journal and pay attention to your dreams. You are remembering and your soul gifts are emerging. During this time of transition and awakening, you may be called to devote yourself to being of service. There are ideas, truths, concepts, books, and creations waiting to be birthed into the world. Stay open to receiving them. Pulling this card may be a sign that you are here to birth one of these creations into the world. Or perhaps you're being called to make a shift in your life in order to be of service. Don't think too much about it. Instead, repeat the following work your light activation. Work your light activation. Hold the card on your heart and say, I surrender to my awakening. I allow the Shakti energy to rise from the base of my spine. I open myself up to the universe using me in a way that delights my mind, body, and spirit. So that's it. Have a good evening.
See ya.